everybody. Thanks for joining us on Beyond Paranormal with Cheryl and Ben Ledoux. I'm Cheryl. I'm here with Ben.
Hello, everyone. I figure you're Cheryl.
I know. Yes, true. I know. I do that every week. You dipstick. Yep, Ben just spilled his drink all over my foot. It's cold, feels good in between my toes. Some excitement for the evening. How is everybody? I was going to say I was doing good until I had Ben's
I do that every
drink in
show.
between my toes. Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, we have a great guest on. I've really been looking forward to having him on. I know that he had a really, really busy summer. Right after we talked to him in May, I read his book, Mr. Chip Reichenthal. He is the author of Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. I read the book. It's a quick read, but it's a great book. It's kind of a paranormal thriller mystery. That's what I would say, but I couldn't put it down. I just really, really liked it. I would recommend it to everybody, and you can find it on Amazon.com. We'll be talking to Chip in just a few moments. He's, besides being an author, he's just got so much going on. I hope that you will all continue to join us throughout the evening. If you have any questions, you can certainly call us at 818-431-8214. If you have a question or a comment, you want to talk to me, Ben, or Chip, you can dial 1 when prompted, and you'll be put into the queue to talk to us. Now, a lot of you kind of stay on the line, listen to us throughout the evening, and we don't have a chance to really interact with you. So I would really encourage you all to get on to www.dtmwickedradio.com/Beyond Paranormal. If you click on the listen and chat button, you'll get into the show, click on our show. Up in the right-hand corner, there's a login button. If you're already logged into Facebook, you don't have to create an account. It'll let you log in with your Facebook. And you can get into our chat room and talk with us throughout the show, comment on what we're talking about, ask your questions there. So feel free to talk on the radio, and, you don't want to be live, but, you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can get into that chat room and do that. I know, that's a mouthful. So, again, 818-431-8214, or you can get us on www.dtmwickedradio.com/Beyond Paranormal and click on Listen and Chat. And we'll be here all evening at 10. And staying really quiet. He's just consumed with making himself a new drink while I sit here with sticky doughs.
I just don't understand how I've always stolen one. Every time.
You just kicked it over.
No matter where I put it.
But, yeah, it's been a really busy week. Even getting back and forth to our guests. The kids constantly, if it's not an appointment for Ben's post-op knee surgery, or me with, everything I have going on, the kids always have some sort of doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, school things, and 6 million things to do. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, soccer. The school wants you to do 6 different fundraisers. I'm not even joking. It's a lot all the time. So I'm out straight. So if you ever need to get in touch with me, Facebook me, Facebook.com. Just search for me, Cheryl LeBlanc Ledoux, or you can find Ben Ledoux. We're there. And our guest is with us, Chip Reichenthal. Hey, Chip, how are you? Chip, are you there?
Supposed to be there.
Maybe he's muted or we're having problems, and I've been talking to myself this whole time. Chip, if you're there, you can just yell out at us.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Oh, there you okay.
He ordered
Good,
a new
you can-
phone. So for a second there, I'm going, oh, my gosh, this darn phone. Nobody can hear me. I've been talking to myself.
No, I heard you perfectly. You know, I mean, that's why I had kids too. I didn't see enough doctors, you know. I just needed to see more doctors and dentists. I mean, that's really the whole point of having kids, right?
I think it is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not.
The endless pocket.
My daughter thought she broke her tooth the other
Oh.
day. And it turned out her other tooth had just grown up underneath it so much that her baby tooth didn't have any roots left on it.
Oh,
and it
boy.
had almost made like a crown on her tooth. And it's just kind of sitting there, and the doctor's just like, okay, we'll just wiggle it. We're not going to try to pull it off and traumatize you. So, you know, that was a nice little dentist bill just for them to tell us that. And there's always Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, soccer practices, and
whatever happened to
and
the string on the doorknob?
Wow. Yeah, I introduced mine to games. It was a lot easier, you know. And that way, you know, it was fun until she started beating me in Mario, and you know, that was it. Of course, that was a few years ago.
I don't even bother playing games against my kids. They know how to use my instruments.
See, you're smarter than I am.
Yeah, even like our iPhones and iPads.
Oh, heck with that. They can go grab the equipment that we used to go out investigating. They just grab it, pick it up. They watch it on TV. They'll pick it up. Yeah, you do it like this, and they already know how to use it.
They know how to
Right.
Like,
I was like, oh, you've got a REM pod? Oh, that's awesome. No.
I know they're so smart. I was disadvantaged, you know, because I mean computers didn't come out until I was in my 30s, you know, so I was almost.
I didn't really use them until like probably my senior year of high school. I had a business class.
I don't know if you're at a disadvantage though, because you're one of the few people who can add, multiply, subtract, and divide in their heads.
Yeah, all on my own. Yeah, and I talk to people face to face and everything. Yeah, you know, so.
I had to remember how to use I had to remember how to use a slide rule the other day.
We actually played outside.
Wow.
I actually have one, and I had to sit there and look at it, and I'm over there. Wait a minute, I remembered using these things.
Do you remember the bead counters?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, the abacus. Yep.
Like and now, like there's days where they're in the swimming pool and stuff, of course, but other days it's like, you want us to what? Go outside?
Yeah. What is that? I think I saw outside on Facebook once, and yeah, right.
That Windows store.
But there's an update on my computer, and I have to go do this. I have to feed my dragons on this app, or do this on.
Yeah, it's a different world, and to drive that point home, my daughter went away to California for a year. To go to school there. She stayed with my sister Randy. She really wanted to see Los Angeles, and she got her shot. Anyway, she comes home. She's been away for a year. Her best friend here in this area was dying to see her. So they got together, and the first thing that they did once they were together after a year is they sat next to each other and both went on Facebook.
I have basically a 16 and 17-year-old niece. So we've been through the whole past teenage years, couple years with them too.
Yeah.
And they'll be sitting next to their best friends, or my niece now has a boyfriend, their boyfriend, and they'll...
Or me or you.
Yeah, and they'll text or Skype each other.
From across the room.
My niece will be, she'll be sitting 10 feet from me, and she'll be like, text me, hey, can you go get me a snack? I know I'm getting old. I'm 35, but I still have my hearing.
Yeah, right.
Good ears. I can talk loudly and everything. You can talk to me. I know you're loud and obnoxious. Like, come on, out with it.
Oh, yeah. It is a different world. I'm still getting used to it. I wouldn't get a cell phone for the longest time. And, once my book came out, I figured now that I'm a published author, I'll buy myself a smartphone. And I still can't figure the darn thing out, It was like a battle because when cell phones first came out, it was all the yuppies, the young urban professionals. It was the thing. for these
have
flashy young folks to get themselves a phone, and I wouldn't. It just seemed like holding a radioactive device to your brain, is not just the best idea. So, I waited until at least you could, hold it away from your face and talk into it with a speakerphone. And even still, it took me a half an hour to figure out how to do a smiley face on a text. That's when I knew I was in trouble.
And, anytime I have a problem with anything, and, my daughter, not swears, but she'll curse me out and be like, because I won't let her have any social media apps yet at all. I just think she's too young for it. She's going to be 12. And I'm just like, no. I know how bad it is. People our age with the drama.
Sure.
But she can't do anything. She's like, Mom, there's a YouTube video for that, don't you?
Oh, man. Wow.
Oh, let's go look. And so it's crazy. She's...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's a dangerous world now with kids and apps, and even with the understanding. I mean, I'm looking at for instance, a couple of weeks ago, celebrities got hacked, and their naked pictures got out there for the world to see. And why you'd post a naked picture of yourself on your phone in the first place, is kind of beyond me. I mean, look in a mirror if you really have to see yourself naked. You don't have to take a picture. Or just the thought that once you say something and hit that enter button, it's out there for forever, for the rest of time. And now you've got employers that look at your Facebook posts or what you've said on Twitter, and they will hold that against you. It's almost like, when you're under arrest, everything you say or do can and will be used against you. And now that they're doing that with, jobs now, with the things you post. So I think it's a good idea. And I'm going to, sound like the uncool old guy to keep the kids away from the apps, at least, for a while, until you can make sure that they absolutely know the difference between once they put that thing out there, whatever they put out there, even the things that say it's a picture, it lasts for 7 seconds and then disappears, that's not true. Then to keep them away from them. That's, at least my old guy opinion.
And it's not even just the employers now. High schools make you, in part of their student handbook, when you sign their handbook, it says that they can go in and review your Facebook, and if you post anything that they don't like, they can suspend you from school.
Oh, sure, right. Sure.
That rule.
Yeah, but, I mean, they closely monitor them now.
But then again, I think that's more of the parents' role. They should be monitoring that kind of
but
stuff.
The schools do too, because they're worried about the bullying and the peer pressure and the inappropriate, the 14-year-old sent a dirty picture to the other 14-year-old, and now they're passing it all over the school.
All right.
And
on the face of it, they go in sounding like it's not an absolute invasion of privacy, that they're really looking out for your best interests. And in the long run, it's a little bit of both, right? I remember when I was a kid in school, then we were reading 1984, George Orwell, about Big Brother is watching you and thought police and all these crazy things. And we said, man, that will never happen. Of course, again, I'm old, so at the time, we had the Cold War with the Soviet Union, and people were digging these big bunkers in their backyard in case the Russians bombed us, and we had that big fear about that. So they were kind of comparing it to communism. And boy, you look at half of the news stories now, and how they're catching criminals because there's cameras everywhere, or they catch people off guard in bad positions. People on disability lose their disability because they're caught on camera somewhere, or running red lights because of cameras. And it's just like cameras are everywhere now and ever present. And boy, there seems like such invasions of privacy now that, when I was a little kid in school and we thought about 1984, which was still, I don't know, it's 20 years away, we were like, oh my goodness, I mean, that I hope that never happens. And now that it's basically an everyday thing, it's almost innocuous. It's like we're kind of numb to it.
Well, you don't realize how much you're regulated anyways. I mean, you have a smartphone, so technically they can find you at any point in time. If you
well,
drive
now
anything,
they can, yeah.
If you own a newer car, you have a GPS locator in that. If you have any theft protection, a locator on that. You have security devices, you're tracked there. I mean, to be honest, anything that makes you safe also makes you trackable.
Yeah, and all these social apps have that login feature where, you know, if I were to drive out to where you are, out in New York, and say I'm in Albany, and I post, and, you know, if I don't have it shut off, it says, hey, you know, Cheryl posted this from Albany, New York.
Oh, right, it knows exactly where and when you are, And I think that's why we're all into ghosts now, because it's safer looking for ghosts than it is driving in your car or being on your phone or walking the street, you know. And I think that's, you know, that's half the thrill, and those are things that we didn't even consider, you know, at least when I started investigating homes or properties or whatever, you know, looking for the potential of, you know, hauntings or paranormal. And now it's kind of a nice escape from the everyday reality of life. You know, all the more reason to want to do it even more, you know.
Yeah, going back to 1984, I was, 5 years old. I can remember, growing up in a relatively small town, my mom used to send us, me and my sister, across town to the grocery store for her, you know, to pick up. We could walk, you know, that was
safe.
Safely. We walked to the park across town by ourselves. Parents never had to worry. We drove our bikes everywhere. Now, I mean, you can't do anything. And
it seems like a distant memory. It really does.
I worry, if I'm going somewhere, I worry about where location services too, because okay, well, is so-and-so going to know that, you know, my house is empty and I'm not home? I mean, they're constantly telling you, you know, not to post because, you know, people know when you're on vacation.
Well, it's because people are not smart when you post. You don't sit there and write. If you wrote out tomorrow and said, hey, I just bought a brand new TV, I got this and that, a hi-fi stereo, I'm going to vacation for a week, and then you got somebody on your friends list that you don't really know, but you went to high school with them, you've never talked to him in 30 years, and you have him on your Facebook, you don't know he's a career criminal, he comes over to your house and just says, well, he's on vacation, so this ought to be pretty easy, I'm just going to go in and get the stuff and walk out.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah, and you're right. And I do have to think about that. You know, my wife and I often, you know, we like to go to Buffalo, for example. We have a lot of friends out there, and it's about 5-6 hours away from where we live here in Albany. And, you know, and even thinking about posting that we're going on vacation or going to visit, you know, my dad in Florida or something, you know, you really have to think twice about that kind of thing, or at least the wording of it. You know, sometimes I post that on purpose when I'm home, you know, just to see if anybody is tempted to sneak in, because you never know.
That was one thing, especially having, a really large house. Old Ben, I am not buying a house that doesn't have an alarm system. That was, number one thing. We had to have an alarm. And two, I'm actually kind of grateful that I have pets, because, if we do go anywhere, I have to make sure someone's here to take care of them. So if I go anywhere, I always have, my brother or my sister come stay at my house and take care of the animals, because I, refuse to, put them in a kennel or something, and I have too many. I have 3 dogs, a couple cats. It's, you know, it costs me more to put them in a kennel than it probably
really, than to take the vacation in the first place, right. Yeah, we do that, too.
But I have to back up on one thing there. You say in 1984 you could walk freely to the store.
You did.
No. I'm going to agree to disagree with you there. All right? I believe in the fact that now we have so much information, it's so easy to come to you. This stuff's been there all the time. There have been bad people in 84, that just as much as there's been bad people in this time and age. There's not that there's more or less. It's just that now you're more aware. And because they've made it so aware, you're afraid to let your kids out and go out and do things, because it's more aware. The information's easier to come by. So now you run on the side. Where before you were granted that, hey, you know, Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones down the road are, you know, good people. It was just, you know, you didn't worry.
Yeah, I think there is something to what you say. You know, there was a thing about, you know, it's not that there's more pedophiles, for example, than there used to be, even though, you know, we had to teach our daughter stranger dangers. We didn't necessarily have to learn it ourselves. Of course, I'm about 20 years older than you guys are. It's still a kind of a different world. But, yeah, the reporting on pedophilia, for example, there was a thing, I think, about 5 years ago on the news where they said it's not that there's more of them per se, even though I think statistically now there are, but they're reporting about them about 600 times more. 600 times more. And how much of that is fear, you know?
You have a database where you can log into your town and see where every one of them lives. I mean, you have, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying you get on the cautious, everybody gets themselves more into the cautious point because it's so much information to find out that, you know, there's, I know 10 guys in your town that happen to have a conviction, and you don't even know what the conviction is.
Right.
I mean, a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old or something. You know, things happen. Not always as black and white as it looks, but, I mean, I'm not saying that it's good. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying there's a lot of things that go on. We have just now it's not a bad thing to have too much information, but at the same time I try to go a little bit less cautious than most because I'd rather my kids go outside and enjoy what's out there than to lock themselves up into a room and hope that everything turns out for the best. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
It's
a mixed bag, you know.
House and never letting it go outside. Why? It's a dog. They were born to be out in nature, running around, chasing things. That's what dogs and cats. If you don't want to have a dog to go outside and have fun, then don't get a dog.
Yeah, no, that's true. And same with kids. I mean, you know, I see families really overusing all that antibacterial stuff, and they don't want the kids out in sandboxes or playing in the dirt. But playing in the dirt is good for you, you know. They give us immune systems for a reason, and, you know, it's good to toughen them up. Because if you're always using all this antibacterial stuff, basically you're weakening their immune system, spoiling them. So, you know, when something hits, it has more opportunity to really do some damage.
They actually accounted that for the rise in allergies and asthma. The fact that kids aren't outside.
They're not desensitized.
They're not picking up the natural pollens and stuff. They're not as exposed to them as much because they're indoors all the time in filtered air. So all the pollens and allergens and everything out there affect them more because they've never built up.
Yeah, especially in this country. You know, I mean, there are cases of asthma in this country. You know, I mean, the statistics are staggering. And, you know, so much more than just about any other country in the world, if not any other country in the world. Staggering. You know, autism also. Autism and asthma. And I think, maybe we're being a little bit overprotective, and that does more harm than good sometimes.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes you don't need to have as much information, or just find a better way to use it.
Yeah. True. Well, you know, I mean, I did. I used to work in radio news, late 70s, early 80s, and you know, it was a whole different thing back then. You know, because, like you said, too much information now, and the problem is that you can go on the internet and you can find just about anything, and you can find everything there is to know about anything, and the news travels so fast that news organizations today have to keep up. But back then there were 3 channels, you know, 4 if you include PBS, but there were the 3 network affiliates and a PBS station, and that's it. And everybody had their news from 6:30 to 7. And back then the whole family sat around a dinner table and ate, and it's usually at the dinner hour when the news was on. So they would not report certain things about John F. Kennedy's affairs, you know, or FBI's guys cross-dressing, or, you know, I mean, all these things, because it just wasn't, the scruples were different, you know, you just didn't talk about that stuff at the dinner table. So, they withheld a lot, and at the same time, it's not like they were really being overly selective and nitpicking for propaganda purposes. It was really about decency. It was all about moral fibers. Every TV show had a moral to the story, and there was always something to learn from that. I remember wishing all that would go away, because too much morals. I was young and adventurous and rebellious. We didn't need all that stuff, and now I look at reality television and the internet and the news, 24-hour news cycles, and and these guys have to give you too much information because they know that you could find it on the internet. So what's the point of watching news at all unless they give you too much information? And a lot of things are just crossing the line a little bit. There's a little less decency than there used to be. More yellow journalism. It's just, in reality television, misbehavior becomes interesting. Rudeness, brashness, competing with no morals whatsoever. And the only moral compass we have now, basically, is political correctness, and that changes as often as whatever they come up with. 3 months from now, it'll be something different, and nobody knows until it's too late. You look at the NFL being chastised for something a couple of players did, and everybody hates on the commissioner, but there were no regulations about domestic abuse and how to handle certain things other than you go as the court system goes. You see what happens, and then you punish accordingly. And this guy gets chastised because of an elevator video that they claim they didn't have, but even that doesn't matter. And granted, this particular case of domestic abuse is horrible. It's horrifying. And, but we shouldn't be punishing the commissioner of football for it. Let's punish the player that did it. And if they didn't have these systems in place to say, okay, you're automatically out of the game, then why would you expect this guy to do it now? He's just going to make it up as he goes along because that's our moral fiber now? No, it's a tough world out there. And it's hard
it is
to find
a tough
things
world, and
about
it doesn't
decency and etiquette, and politeness. Nobody's
really
teaching that.
What gets missed is if it wasn't an NFL player, if it was just an everyday person that doesn't have a big name out there, they already would have been over with and dealt with.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't care if, a superstar, if they screw up, that should be it. That's it. Same treatment.
Yep.
No difference.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's constantly about what celebrity did what, and,
Now, no, it's about money now. It's all about money. That's all it really comes down to. Because the average Joe, if the average Joe, this happened to the average Joe, they're not going to go to his boss and sue him for his employees' actions.
Exactly right.
They're going to go after because there's no real money involved. But now you're dealing with the NFL, $, that's how it works. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately is right. Or take the basketball owner who's part-time prostitute, made a recording of things that he said in the privacy of his own home at the time, and look, I'm this guy that publicly really tries to represent, kindness, being nicer to others, and this and that. But even I will say, that we all say things in the privacy of our own home or in our own car when we're driving on the road, that if recorded, we would all of us, every single one of us, even the most proper person on earth, is bound to say something in the privacy of their own home that would get them chastised if they said it publicly. And this guy lost a basketball team over that. Granted, abhorrent behavior, but, it's no different than anybody else. And look, even out of anger or sense of inferiority or something, we're going to say things defensively, especially when we think that nobody's listening, to make ourselves feel better. And, if we are all held to the same standards as that guy, then we'd all lose everything. And I'm not saying, give him his basketball team back, but it's just a little shocking to think what the consequences are, and it's always hindsight is 20/20, and we always walk into mistakes. And look, there are people in public forums, and us as radio hosts, we're all in a public forum, and we have to think really about what we say and what we talk about, because we really don't want to offend our audience or anything. But I mean, some of the penalties against some mistakes that are human, are a little bit ridiculous. And to make it a learning lesson, I get that, but still, it's still scary. And there are some groups that are held in much higher regard than they would have been 20 or 30 years ago. And there are some people that are a little slower to catch up, and it is a free country. It's a little scary. But I do wish that there was some sort of common source for decent behavior, because we're not teaching it through reality television or the what I want when I want it psychosis of the internet. And it's a little scary, and a lot of these things we won't really notice until 20, 30 years goes by, that we were way too wrong on this, way too late.
Yeah. Totally. That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
Just for a second. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I could go on for hours on government stuff. And
I know, right?
Well, easy, because people don't realize that they're just people. Just like you and I, it doesn't matter if they're worth $1 billion or $2. They still have 2 legs, 10 fingers. Well, maybe they might not have 10 fingers. Maybe they have. They all are just a person, just like anybody else. It's just like anybody who is a medium or a psychic or a circus performer. They're all people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you are. You're still a person, whatever skill set that you have. And like you had a line in there, you never. There's no point in arguing with somebody over. You're all just as smart as what you know. Everybody is smart in their own way. You may not be an expert in biochemistry, but you may have a very good herbal dictionary in your head, and everybody's valuable in their own ways. Well, urban. Herbal.
Well, both,
no,
really,
herbal.
because there's herbal dictionaries too.
Okay.
Horticulture and exactly. I mean, everybody's smart in their own way, and it's utilizing those skills and what you're, so to speak, good at.
Yeah. And it would be nicer to see a system that doesn't just hold us accountable for our mistakes, and along the lines of what you were talking about, how everybody is smart at something, and everybody is valuable. Everybody, has value, and everybody basically is a living, walking story. And, mention that in the book also. If you take the time to listen to people's story, then it's a fascinating thing.
And story. Everyone who's tuning in and has no idea, we're talking with Chip Risenthal. Saying that right?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Really long
and we've been talking about just a lot of different stuff so far.
But yes, beyond comes from.
Yeah.
We just go. We go everywhere.
Yes, we do. Chip is the author of Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. We got a copy of his book.
Autographed.
Last May. Yes, autographed.
Yep. You were among the first people to buy it, and I think you got it the first day that it was formally out and available for sale. So among the first people to ever have a copy of the book, which is awesome.
We should have got it numbered.
If anyone has any comments, you can reach us at 818-431-8214, and as always at www.dtmwickedradio.com/Beyond Paranormal and click on Listen and Chat. Again, Chip, your book
Oh, it was very...
I read it that first week that we got home from the Parahistory Con that John Tobin and Glory Haunt Hounds put on, and I know you were a part of that as well. And your book isn't an overly long story, but...
full of a lot of information.
So much information, and it was such a great...
Did you do it on purpose that chapters 4, 8, and 12 were so, like, informationally packed?
No,
but, it was
it
just
or did it just happen to work out that way? Because 4, 8, and 12 was like a complete look upon your life and doings and giving you the insight and how you go about doing the things that you do. I mean, I just 4, 8, and 12 were like
overanalyzing.
I don't know why. I just happened to go through. I'm like, you know something? I just realized that chapters 4, chapter 8, and he went in multiples of 4. There's a system here.
Yeah, and that's Ben. He's a very analytic guy. And I was so thrilled to hear from each and both of you about the book and how much you enjoyed it, and that means so much to me. And it's a relatively short read. I mean, it maybe straight through in 4 or 5 hours, and I originally was going to do a nonfiction. It was just going to be about mediumistic work, and as radio hosting went on with the paranormal or metaphysic realms, I noticed that people in general have very little tolerance for titles. Not the title, even the dead won't tell you the truth, but if I were to represent myself as a medium per se, then they'd automatically want the circus act. And I've noticed that, and they want you to and expect you to be accurate 100% of the time, and that just doesn't happen. And a really good medium would tell you, it's not 100% accuracy thing, So I instead decided to make it a fictional story and put some real life type of perspective in there. I could reach a wider audience with it, potentially anyway, and do more than one thing at once. I could talk about growing up as with these tendencies, these mediumistic tendencies, but also throw in a good murder mystery in there and have some fun with the language as well. I'm a big fan of the English
very
language.
I loved how you. I mean, I'm not going to give the book away because I want people to read it. It is really good work. I just loved how you are able to go off into this technical
it's just
aspect.
Very well written.
It's you'll take a chapter. I'll just use 4 for example because that's my favorite chapter. That was the first one that you really got into the background of what it is that you do, and you're talking about the spirits and everything, and how
not him, Richie.
Well, exactly. But you bring it in all in, and then at the very end of it, it's like that last paragraph or two. All of a sudden, you tie the story right back into it, as if it was just like a monologue in your head, and you bring it right back into the story, and it just flows right through. It really was a good writing, I have to admit.
So, if anybody's wondering, could you just give us a summary of kind of what the book's about, so that everybody kind of gets a grasp on what we're talking about and raving about, because it is a great book.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Again, it is ultimately a murder mystery that's trying to put the ideals of spirit medium work from a first-person perspective woven in between the storyline. So basically, I thought the best way to go about that is to make this fictional book where the main character is a spirit medium, and he finds himself challenged when his best friend from high school, and this is probably 20 or 30 years later than that, has been arrested for murder. And it really kind of throws the medium off, but to complicate things further, the best friend is not at all into the talking to the dead stuff, he just doesn't get it. But circumstantial evidence is damning, and it is piling up, and out of desperation, the best friend asks our medium if he can communicate with the murder victim in order to find a way to clear his name. Granted, the medium does attempt communication, and initially it's a little foggy to him at first, and it creates the idea that maybe, can the dead lie to us whilst we're in communication with them? And that's, something that would come up occasionally when we interviewed some psychics and mediums on radio. And, of course, a lot of paranormalists, especially ones that work with particularly malevolent types of entities, may feel that, they're always lying, And really, since we really started doing radio and tying it into paranormal or the psychic realms, really been trying to create some sort of idea that, it's not evil, it's not all demonic and nasty, we see a lot of the TV shows or movies that always tie some fearful aspects into the paranormal. When, for the most part, when I was doing this before the computers came out and before we had all this great equipment, it was really boring. You'd go to a place that you hear was haunted and, maybe 8 hours a day for 15 or 16 days, and sometimes still walk away with nothing. Or something would happen, a door would close or open on its own, or a ball maybe would roll across the floor without any kind of propulsion possible, but we'd still never catch it on film, especially we had Polaroid cameras back then, I really wanted to raise awareness that it can sometimes be a loving type of thing. That was my experiences coming into both the paranormal realm and the psychic realm, dealing with afterlife, is sometimes unremarkable, dull even. To think that you'd have communication with somebody who died, 50 years ago or whatever, would always be enticing or exciting, and sometimes it's just kind of plain, but it depends on how you look at it. So it was kind of a combination of a murder mystery and some of my personal experiences when I was really well attuned as a spirit medium for the time that I really had that attunement going, and trying to create a new way to look at such a revolutionary type of craft, that seems to always get kind of a bad rep.
Right. Now, can you tell us how much of this book is actually true?
Aside from the murder, just about all of it. The murder mystery was created out of thin air, but there were people that from my own life that inspired some of these characters. But as you mentioned, sometimes in some of the chapters, namely 4, 8, and 12, where I do kind of go into a more of a revelation about the first-person perspective. All of that is true to my experience, except perhaps, I didn't do a lot of group readings back in the day. But aside from that, my first foray into the paranormal, losing my best friend, we met when we were both 2 years old. He lived next door in the house we had moved into when I was 2. I knew him all my life. In the book, he died but came to me on this swing set in my parents' backyard between 8th and 9th grades for the sake of the story. But in real life, all of that happened, except it happened when I was a week shy of my 21st birthday. And my best buddy, I'd known him since 2. We were like twins. We were never competitive, we were just instantaneously best friends, and it really was my first soulmate growing up, although I was too young to realize it at the time. But it made it much easier for me to develop soulmates in older age, But he was in a motorcycle accident. Drunk driver ran a red light, hit him on his motorcycle, and he was thrown into the car head first and was brain dead when they brought him to the hospital. And that was my first experience with death, but he wasn't dead. He was brain dead and kept artificially alive, with the breathing apparatus and stuff, and ultimately until his parents had to go from New York to Florida to unplug him. And that happened on the eve of my 21st birthday. And in the book, it was on the eve of birthday somewhere between 8th and 9th grades, but in real life, that did happen, and it was the night or eve of my 21st birthday, and he did appear to me on the swing. But in a way, and Ben, you and I had talked about this before, where it's not like I saw him with my eyes. It was like he was there, but it's almost more like a creative visualization. The swing had some sort of energy to it. It's almost like on a really hot day where you can see the heat rise, you can see the air's got some extra waves in it, and that's the heat. But, you picture something like that, almost like it was an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Predator. And the thing was like invisible but visible. It was kind of like that. And he did come to me, and he did ask for my blessing. He wanted to give up. Look, he was brain dead. He was in a vegetative state. It would have been, as long as they kept him alive, he would have been in that state. Couldn't think for himself, couldn't eat, couldn't move. People had to clean up after he went to the bathroom. They had to feed him through IVs or sometimes shove Jell-O in his mouth and hope that he swallows without. It was just, and for him, this was a kid who was always dying to be independent. He ran away from home a few times and wasn't even unhappy with his parents. He just really wanted that feeling of freedom. So for him, at age 21, to be that confined was a lot more painful than I realized. So he came to me on the swing. It was like about 1 a.m. I went out on the swing, a couple of quarts of beer, getting a nice buzz, trying to figure out how to process this whole thing. And that's when he came to me and said, he wanted my blessing to give up, and I tried to talk him out of it. For real. Come on, man. It's all about living, the stronger survive. You hang in there, man. Medicine will come around. They'll find something for you. And he's like, no, it's already too late, and he really put it in perspective until I really saw from his eyes and his perspective, what he was facing. And I did. I did give him my blessing. I apologized to him for trying to talk him out of it. And I thanked him for coming. And I did say, maybe, you could visit, like, after you've passed, maybe you can come visit. He said he would try. But once he got my blessing, this energy on the swing next to me just disappeared. Boom. As quickly as it arrived, it disappeared in similarly quick fashion. And about 10 minutes later, my mom comes outside. It's like 3 a.m. by now. She'd never been awake at 3 a.m. all my life, And now she's not only awake, but outside, the distance to the swing set, and said that, your buddy's parents just called. They pulled the plug on him about 10 minutes ago. And it was at that moment, it was, I think 1979 at the time, I realized that, or 78 actually, no, 79. I realized that I had, talked to my best friend at the moment of his death, and that really changed everything for me, and that was true. I had another visit from my wife's father a year after he passed. That's in the book, but after the book is over, it's kind of a post-forward, and I did write that story in there. And so twice I was visited by people in very remarkable ways. And so the only conclusion I could come up with is that kind of a visitation from a ghost, if you will. But these were both people that I loved and loved me. These were experiences that were not scary. Nobody tried to push me down a flight of stairs or scratch me. There was no demons afoot. Nothing even close to that. And that's the kind of outlook that I've had throughout my years trying to, as both a paranormal investigator and when I was attuned as a medium, because to me it was all loving. And there is such an element of fear that's portrayed throughout the industry on TV, in blogs, in films, because people have kind of grown up with that. The ghost story was the one you saw in a movie theater. This goes back like 600-700 years, where Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost, Dante Alighieri, writes about the 7 levels of hell, and everybody starts going to church because now they're scared. Now they have a portrayal of hell and feel, well, I've sinned, so, maybe I'm going to make one of these 7 levels, and all of a sudden church aisles filled up. And so the church says, well, you know what? If it ain't broke, let's not, why fix it? So they've kind of been playing on fear. It leaks into the entertainment industry that way. Legends are more interesting than the truth, so you print the legend, feed the legend. It just seems to work that way. And I just really feel strongly about being the opposing voice and saying, you know what, sometimes they're kind. And if you respect them, or if something is trying to communicate with you, think of what kind of honor that is, that maybe somebody's crossing a dimension or plane, or if there is indeed ghosts or spirits, they're attempting afterlife communication with you. There is honor in that, and so why not reach out with respect and gratitude? If that happens to me, I'm thrilled that something or someone is trying to communicate. And, of course, I debunk and do my best to debunk every other possible scenario. But when it comes to that, or even if it doesn't, I at least try to reach out respectfully. These people have lived valued lives, if indeed they are in the afterlife. So assume that they are wiser than you for having lived and died. So reach out with respect. And even when you do it to a living person who's angry, and approach an angry person with gentleness, calm, and kindness, and empathy, chances are you can pacify their anger a little bit, and they will give you the time of day in similar respectful fashion.
That's true, and I have actually made that statement a few times on here. Just the fact of investigation. I think that anybody who is starting out or going into an investigation should always do exactly that: is to approach a spirit in a positive manner and try to be friendly, to try to establish the fact that you're trying to communicate. Because even if it's angry, it's probably upset the fact that whoever is there isn't able to listen or hear, and they're trying desperately to get a message out. And it's just a matter of being patient and letting them know that, we're here to help. We're going to try to use our instrumentation to, and if we have the luckiness of having a medium or something else, we're going to use everything, all of our tools combined to try and get the answer of what you're trying to say. And if you approach it in a positive way, you have to realize if you go into a negative way, even if it's a negative situation, you're going to be able to go home at night, but these poor people that you go to investigate their houses have to sleep in this.
Right.
And they have to live there. And so, you don't go in, that'd be like going over and kicking a hornet nest and expecting not to get just something you don't do.
Right. And there are teams that do that. Not purposefully, of course, but still, they shake something up and they walk out, and they're done. And the client is sometimes worse off as a result. And it's also why I never, on an investigation, represented myself as a medium or tried to cross the two. It's kind of a different type of feel in a paranormal investigation. It's kind of a different energy anyway. Like as a spirit medium, oftentimes you have clients that are grieving the loss of a loved one. And it's all about the bridge, for pets and animals. They call it the rainbow bridge, and I love that expression. But it's very similar here because it's all about connection and connecting the living from those they survive. And so it's a loving and kind and kind of a quiet thing. But in a paranormal setting, even on the face of it, there is a belief that if there is spirit in this location, then perhaps they're stuck there for some reason, or perhaps there is a reason that they can't move away from this property, So there is some sort of sense of despair or some sort of kind of element of sadness or anger, at least in the mystique of the kind of energy there. So oftentimes people will think of these things with the potential for anger, and their survival mechanism kicks in, and they will kind of approach it angrily, or with some sort of hostility. Like, if you talk to me, you can talk to me, but don't follow me home, or and it just seems that there's always some evil afoot, or because we can't see them, then they're merely there to jam us up, and that's the only reason they're there, to make our lives miserable. I've seen people get scratched, and walk away with the sense that it wasn't malicious. It was just trying to get their point across or be heard, and it's almost always when...
It's just like backing an animal into a corner.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You have to approach it kindly, and that's usually the best. That's really the best way. And then if something proceeds past that point, then you might need to go outside to get some extra help on it. But if you don't back something into a corner, and you definitely don't aggravate it to the point of, I think anyone who gets scratched or pushed or anything is already exhibiting the fact that they are coming into the situation in a negative manner.
No.
Yeah, not necessarily all the time, but a lot of the times, if you perceive negativity, if you walk into a place and you're like, this place is evil, it's just a horrible place, this guy's a jerk, whoever this ghost is a jerk, and that's what they are, and then you possess that inside.
Well, I have to say it definitely from a different point of view, because I went on an investigation with a very open mind, very, insightful intuition. Not necessarily thinking, oh, my God, there's something evil here, but, there is a possibility of something here. What can we do to help? And there was a very powerful energy there. And as open-minded as I was pushed from behind down the stairs onto a friend of ours. And it wasn't because it was negative or I provoked anybody, because we were very...
It doesn't necessarily have to be you, though.
Well, I'm just saying, because you were...
I wasn't meaning as a group. You can ask my brother. He's the one who's notorious for this one. That's why I used the hornet nest. Wherever I went fishing with my brother, I would end up stepping on a hornet nest and he would get stung. And it never failed. So I remember the last time that we ever went fishing, he said, this is the last time, and I'm going first. So he went first down through the woods. And then I had to stop, just by luck of the thing, my shoe was untied. So I stopped for 2 seconds while he walked through the woods, tied my shoe, he stepped in a hornet nest and got stung. So it's a group activity. But,
everybody in our group was very, very calm. We
absolutely
didn't do anything...
It's mindset a lot, but at the same time...
Taunt or entice or anything like
that.
Also it just happened to be the energy that was already in the house. I don't know what anybody did prior to us being there.
But it's a matter of intensification.
I certainly can't give away the details of what I know about that case. I can only say, personally what happened to me.
Mm-hmm. Right. I've seen a situation where, nobody sensed anything bad or nasty in the room when one of the people got scratched. And following this whole thing, the person who got scratched did not overreact or did not automatically assume that there was malice afoot, which was really kind of amazing for the person involved to do that. And we all really retraced the evening and saw that there seemed to be something trying to communicate with the person who ultimately got scratched. And we went on to something else. So it seemed to be everybody's agreed opinion at the end of this particular night that it was kind of a Lenny of Mice of Men. This thing just didn't know its own strength. And it was kind of, tapping him on the shoulder, theoretically speaking, and kind of over-tapped, And it was encouraging and refreshing to see that something like that happened, and no one in that room or on that investigation went there, with the whole evil thing. And it was very, very refreshing to see.
Well, I mean, I guess I can understand because it's the same idea. It's just a frustration level, and like, hey, hello, I'm something. And I think that's what. I mean, I guess that's the main point. Is that I think that most hauntings are really just frustrations of I can't get you to hear me.
Yeah, agreed.
Or they don't understand that I passed on and you're living in my house. Moving things around, and then I like the other part you put in your book where people can get so paranoid that you can cause your own issues to happen.
Well, I know that we're in an investigation where, it was a very active location. We knew the energy was there. We knew what was going on there. And then, we were saying, okay, fine, you really don't want to interact with us or communicate with us. Like, we got nothing. And then as we're leaving, we had left our cameras there because they were people we knew, and we knew that something was going to happen as soon as we left. We just kind of knew it. And, we see, as we're walking out the door, a chair and the noise at the same time go flying across the attic. Like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I'm not talking to you. Just, take a hike. So I mean, they have different reasons for doing things.
Yeah, it seems, different situations, different outcomes. And here's something you might get a kick out of, especially because you read the book. There is a character in the book, a detective, a homicide detective, state police detective. Yep. When I initially started writing the book, there was no detective in there. I was just going straight for the story. I didn't want our central character, the medium, to have a family. I just wanted basically the story. And there's this gentleman. His name is Mark Keyes. He's a Pennsylvania state trooper, a detective, actually, gold badge, I think, narcotics. And I had him on my radio show called Beyond the Norm, Mondays at 9 p.m. on the A1B radio network. And he has a team that works malevolent hauntings. And these are all law enforcement officials. And that's kind of a neat thing. He's got a couple of other Pennsylvania state troopers with him. He's got some local officers, a couple of FBI agents, and a real estate agent. And they bring a medium with them, somebody that they've gotten to know and trust over the years, and they work some real malevolent hauntings. And they're very careful not to be too if something moves, they're going to debunk every single possible alternate explanation. They're in no hurry to assess ghosts on what's going on in the household. But because they're in law enforcement, their research methods are astounding. And similar to the show The Dead Files, my personal favorite out of all the paranormal shows. I'm a total fan of that Dead Files show, where they have a homicide investigator and a spirit medium, and each do their separate investigations. The detective will get the history and find out any possible occurrences of death on or near the property, and the medium will do a walkthrough and use her psychic sense, and then they compare notes at the end. And they find trouble, and they say, well, here's what you should do, and then they're on to the next location because their production schedule doesn't allow them to stick around. These guys will work a case until it's over. They won't stop until the client is pacified, and it's an astounding thing. And because this guy's been a cop and works malevolent spirits, when I had him on the show, I asked him, well, what's worse? You work with the living that are particularly malevolent, and you work with the dead that are particularly malevolent. What do you think is worse, the living or the dead? And he didn't even hesitate, He said the living, without a doubt or hesitation, because the living people can do the most depraved things to other living people. Sometimes they do them to dead people too, but he didn't even have to stop and think about it. I was so inspired from that I added the character of the homicide detective in the book, even made him central to the plot line and throughout the entire story. And now Mark Keyes, who inspired the character of Detective Locke in my book, has his own book coming out. Same publisher. It's from Rowe Publishing. It's called Chasing Shadows. I think it's out. He just got his first initial copies, so I think it goes on sale in about a week or so. Called Chasing Shadows. He asked me if I would read through the book, and I did, and it is honestly the best book I've ever read about any paranormal topic. I mean, it is phenomenal, and it's so neat to see it through the eyes of a cop,
Yeah.
I love every perspective. I mean, that's why we try to work with all types of teams and try to talk to all types of people on the radio. It gives you the insight because, I mean, without even realizing it, we all share on the, a lot of people are unwilling to share information, but when you get them on the radio and you're engaging with a friendly chat and we're talking, and then you're just like, oh, yeah, you want to know a neat little trick? You could do this. Oh, really? That's great, and it's a beautiful forum. And I know that the field is changing a lot, and everybody's opening up a lot more, which is really nice to see. And but it's so nice to work with so many different people with so many different viewpoints, because there's no set way of going about doing an investigation. There's no set rules. There's some set rules, but there's no set way of getting the information. It's ways and learning to adapt to you really got to adapt to every situation. And I can see how a cop is, I mean, his natural duties as a law enforcement, he has to adapt to every situation, behaviorally, what's threatening, what's not, what's more threatening than another situation. He automatically has that training already there, and that has to be like a really useful tool, especially coming into an investigation where you can sit there and, all right, well, this is not as important, and be able to sit there and pick out what's really important to go through, plus the protocol. I'm looking forward to reading that book. I'm going to have to look it up now.
Oh, it is, incredible. He helped me with mine because after I interviewed him on the radio and got that light bulb moment, to instead of having our central character just start the book having this secondhand information that the best friend is charged with murder and the victim is somebody they both know, I thought, wow, it would be something else if it starts with a homicide investigator coming to the medium's door, and dropping all this on him and astounding him. And plus I actually called Mark and I asked him if he could look through the first chapter of my book to see if it was realistic enough, because I don't know police procedure, and especially not as well as he does, and got his advice, and he was also he actually recommended, if you're going to name the guy Locke, why don't you have him his first name Matt, so he could be Matlock like the TV character. So that was actually his idea that I took and ran with. So it's kind of cool, and it's again, life imitating art, or personal truths to a fictional book outlasting the book. I actually do have some people that have read the book, mine, even the dead won't tell you the truth, and ask me if I'm going to write another one with the medium and the detective, because they seem to like that dialogue, best of all the other characters that I added to the book. They seem to like the work between the medium and the detective. So I may do that.
Well, I think it kind of tied it together. I mean, it added you made it a murder mystery, and then it really tied the rest of the piece together. I don't believe, if you didn't have the officer involved, I thought it was kind of nice the fact that it was very good that he was obviously, with the way you wrote him, he was very open to the mediumship abilities, which was good, because it was, one, it saved a lot of time for.
Really did. Yeah.
Imagine how much time it takes to. From personal experience, what it is. To, explain to somebody what it is that you're seeing and doing, and they're like, "What the heck are you talking about? Right. I don't get it. What are you trying?"
Yeah, especially with somebody from a criminal investigative background.
It's
for example,
a lot more
I mentioned.
Popular.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the Dead Files earlier. The Steve DeChavy, who is the homicide detective on that show, has never had a paranormal experience in his life, and that's, to me, fascinating, especially because he's on, one of the biggest paranormal shows of all, and it never occurred to me. I always thought, well, these guys are near a lot. They see a lot of death. They're near death a lot. And I just thought that maybe because of that, they'd be more inclined to think along the terms of paranormal, or at least not scoff at it. But it's usually the opposite is true, because they are so eagle-sharp focused on clues and on noticing everything in your purview on the scene, so they can get clues to these deaths, that they don't even have time to go there to such a far-off and abstract place, because they're really living in the moment of the here and now and noticing everything in their environment to see how it could tie in to a potential homicide or fatality. And, he worked Manhattan North Precinct for like 25 years, which is, that's a pretty tough, that's a tough gig right there, especially, if you're working homicide in Manhattan North Precinct. And he would joke about how some of the other cops gave him a little grief. Oh, so you're drinking the Kool-Aid now, huh? They'd give him a little bit of grief about being on the Dead Files, and that's pretty fascinating too. But I met Mark Kaizen in real life, working on a project with Chris DeCesare. I don't know if you know Chris. I'm pretty sure you do, right? With the movie Please Talk With Me and the book Surviving Evidence, and he had a nationally known haunting, C2D1 haunting, Chris DeCesare, when he was in college in 1985 at the University of Geneseo, and Mark was working with Chris in a film. And I met him, and he was pretty instant with, because he knows Chris, and he was in the movie, which had to do about a paranormal thing, that he was so open to it. And so that really was more against my experience with police. Most of them usually are really in the moment and not thinking about, ghosts or things like that.
No, it's true, and I can relate to him, because when my work found out that I'm a marine engineer, so I'm on ships. We don't call them ghosts, we call them gremlins. But besides that point, so it's just different terminology, different field. But when they found out that I was doing this on the side, and we went to the Parahistory Con, and then they popped that on my Facebook, There it goes, the Facebook. The glorious Facebook gives out information.
Oh, you'll have a picture of back to May.
But yeah, in there, I had some pictures on there, and they went around the engine room. Well, since I'm the engineer, and they made little paper towel ghosts of them around the engine room, and I had to come down there, and everywhere you look, there'd be a little ghost hanging up. They're still hanging up, actually. Nobody wanted to take them down. Oh. Yeah, I'll have to send you a picture or a link to it.
No, I'll just post
please. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
For in a second.
I would love to see
yeah, we're just sitting there, and I walk in, and that's what I got when I came back to work. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things about working in this field is other people's reactions to it, you know.
They love it. They've actually been on my radio shows a couple times now. I don't know if they're on tonight. I don't see them on the chat room, but they don't usually. They hide.
They just listen up top.
Yeah, I do that too. I very rarely go into chat rooms of shows that I'm listening to.
I'm a creeper too. As I don't like to let anybody know that I prefer one station over the other because I go back and forth. I have so many friends that are co-hosts now that or radio hosts rather, that I kind of just like sit back and listen, or I play them on the archives because I don't want anybody to know or feel like, oh, you listen to hers more than his, or, you know, sometimes it just happens to be, you know, certain days of the week I can listen to things more than others, or, you know, I get really busy with 3 kids.
Sure.
And
oh, yeah, kids especially. But, yeah, I get that completely, especially when we're radio hosts, you know, people pay a different kind of attention to that sort of thing. You know, I used to DJ nightclubs for about 20 years, Albany and Saratoga. And, you know, and any time I went on the dance floor, you know, I might as well have, I felt naked, you know, like everybody was staring at me. You know, it's kind of a weird thing. So, yeah, they do pay a little extra attention to that, and that's largely why I very rarely go into chat rooms.
Well, another interesting thing you mentioned in your in the beginning in your prologue, you mentioned a very interesting foundation that I found interesting to it right off the bat. Is you had the Forever Family Foundation mentioned in there with several members. Mm-hmm. I didn't know putting that out there because I saw that and I looked into I look into everything. I just can't help it. Mm-hmm. And that was just a really great program. Were you a part of that, or were you?
No, I was not. But it's I just thought, well, the Forever Family Foundation, for the sake of the listeners, is a nonprofit organization. It was founded by Bob and Fran Ginsberg, who lost a daughter and were so bereaved with grief that they looked for something to give them a spark of energy. You know, they were so saddened, really, you know, the poison of deep grief. So they started looking for different kind of answers. They found some healing in studying, you know, any trace that they could have some hope of being able to somehow communicate with her again. It's a very sweet and sad story, but they took, you know, the one thing, you know, every parent's nightmare. I mean, the worst possible scenario for any parent or any family, really, and they ultimately made the most out of it. Now, Lloyd Auerbach, and this guy has been around for a long, long time. He's probably, you know, my biggest idol. He was doing ghost hunting before the movie Ghostbusters came out, you know, and long before there was computers or equipment of that kind. He was, and not just doing it, he was on David Letterman and Larry King and Dick Cavett and Oprah Winfrey, and he was like the go-to guy. Any time that ghosts or paranormal came up in any conversation nationally or internationally, Lloyd Auerbach was the guy that they would bring on. He's now very big in parapsychology. You know, He's the guy that will tell you that a lot of times poltergeists, where the hauntings, where a lot of things move around in a room or gets thrown about, it's more possible that it's a living person in the home that is causing this, because we know that living people can move things with their mind, psychokinesis or telekinesis. Well, we don't know that dead people can do that. So, that really brought him to the forefront in the early 90s, and before that, he was running around with MacGyver type of equipment in his lab gear, investigating. He is now the president of the Forever Family Foundation, took over January of this year, and Bob and Fran take more of a, they're co-presidents, but they were the founders, and they study this. I mean, they study this. They take mediums and they put them through rigorous testing. I mean rigorous. And they only take the best of these mediums. And we're talking rigorous. Laboratory setting, testing over and over, and under all these different circumstances and settings. And once they find the best of the best, then they certify them for the Forever Family Foundation, and they utilize them to help people cope with the loss of their loved ones. They use these mediums to help people counsel grief. And I think, to me, that is just the most beautiful idea on earth, because it really is, it speaks to the ideal of mediumship. I mean, if you're going to end up utilizing such a gift, then to help others and to use it to pay forward is just astoundingly beautiful. So I absolutely love this, and I've gotten to know Bob and Fran. I've gotten to know Lloyd, through the years, and so I talk to them a lot. I am a working volunteer for the Forever Family Foundation, and I help them promote events and things of that nature. So I am a member in that sense, but I am just in a stage of my life now. I kind of wounded from a car accident 17 years ago, and have some residual pain that gets worse as I get older. So it's come a time in my life where I just can't do the medium thing anymore. It hurts too much. So, I can at least talk about it. I can write about it. I can teach about it. But I cannot, I cannot be nearly as good as I once was.
And
go ahead.
Where you're from there, I had someone hit me head on back to 2000, and as a child, I was definitely more open and sensitive than I am now, and having I have chronic pain, and so I guess dealing with that, I think it kind of puts a damper on certain ways of opening up, or even meditation. It interferes with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and another thing with chronic pain, and I am so entirely sorry to hear that, and I'm so sad for you, because believe me, I know what that's like. It has burdened a lot of people, a lot of exceptionally sweet people, and there's really no voice for it. I'm kind of open, sometimes too much, about my pain, but it is behind every decision that I make now. So, people might as well know about it. But at the same time, it's interesting to see a lot of people in our field, paranormal or psychic fields, really come from a place of pain. You talk to these people at Paracons and find out almost all of them, if not all of them, have come from some sort of pain, one way or another, physical, emotional, abuse, different kinds of pain, and it almost, without sounding weird, it makes it kind of sweet in a way to see that all these people have come together and have attached themselves to this field, kind of in a way where, my pain is spinal. People can't see it. So for the first 10 years, I was treated very badly. Doctors, lawyers, employees, or employers rather, people in general, because they can't see it. They don't believe you. And so you have to be all the more convincing over time in order to get people to understand. So it's easier to identify with something else that people can't see and therefore don't understand. And, it's kind of a neat thing. And it has left us with a lot more humility, We seem to be humble. We seem to be gentler. If I had a choice, Cheryl, and, this is on the 19th of this month, October, will be my 18th year anniversary of the accident. It's 1996, October 19th, a day that will live in infamy. But if I had a choice to live my life over again, I would still take the pain because it has made me more spiritual. It has taken a lot of hate out of my life. I just don't have the power to hate anymore. It's too much energy, and it hurts. It hurts to hate. It hurts to be hated. So, it's easier to detach from that sort of thing. And I kind of like where it has brought me,
Yeah, I can't say this. I would rather be pain-free and, going, 12 plus years of pain. I've been through surgery. I've been through every kind of pain, management therapy, physical therapy, injections, 9 yards. And I'm not I don't do the pain pills and all that. I kind of just deal with it. But I guess this industry too has kind of opened me up to, a new type of ways of relaxing, the metaphysical ways, different types of meditations that have kind of helped me cope more. And a lot of people don't. I think that's a lot of the reason why people get into this industry too. They go into a metaphysical store. They start looking for ways to cope holistically with pain and stuff, because doctors don't give out medications anymore for people with pain. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, or if they do, then there are consequences to it. Socially, legally, medicinally, you name it. But but you did mention that it is hard to meditate when you're sore all the time. When you're on in a high level, critical level pain, 24/7. How do you close your eyes and relax and meditate? And it's very difficult to do that. Hypnosis too. I was actually certified as a hypnotherapist because that was another way I found you could help other people with pain, not necessarily chronic, but sometimes people who are disabled by it. There are ways to help them in hypnosis. So that's kind of neat too.
And I'm really interested with hypnotherapy and stuff, and I have done it in the past once before. Very, very relaxing. And have you ever done a live hypnotherapy session, like on the radio or anything?
No, nor would I. Only because I don't think it would make for interesting radio. But look, I'm not a stage guy. I'm not a guy who can take a crowd of people and make them cluck like a chicken. But it was the difference between being a hypnotist and a hypnotherapist is a lot of studying difference and psychology, neurolinguistic programming, really getting to know and study the subconscious mind, and that's a fascinating thing too. Yeah. And subconscious mind and suggestibility is another huge thing for our paranormal industry, both by blame and by process, because a lot of times And I didn't mention it, but we kind of hit that point earlier. You know, I never represented myself as a medium on a paranormal investigation, and there are times I have seen some people who have tainted a room, especially when you do public investigations, and everybody, you hope, is an empty, open slate. You know, they walk into a property and we don't want to prejudice them one way or another. By, you know, historically this is a nasty place, or this is bad, or oh, this is great and everything is beautiful. No, they're open slates, and as a teaching opportunity, you try to keep the people in this public setting on a paranormal investigation as open slate as possible. And as soon as somebody says, I got a bad feeling about this room, oh, my hair is standing up on end, I just got touched, then it poisons the well. It takes this open slate and taints it, you know. So now people's expectations have changed, and especially for people who have never been on one before. They're even more impressionable because they take for granted if somebody represents themselves as a medium, they must be, or at least they must be good at it. You know, yes. And our experience has taught us that that's not always the case. But, you know, once somebody says, I got a bad feeling about this, then expectations rise, and so does the level of suggestibility. Mark Keyes, in his book, Chasing Shadows, that I mentioned, my state trooper buddy, calls it the ghost effect. I mean, as soon as you mention the possibility of ghosts, or if somebody experiences something by being touched or scratched, or at least the sense therein, then everybody starts expecting the same thing will happen to them. So they go out of their way to find what this ghost can do to you. If it can do it to him, then it must be able to do it to you. And people will see a ghost or sense a ghost where there really is nothing to suggest.
I think that's where the human nature point comes in, because like you'd mentioned before and mentioned in your book, is that you can make things happen. It's proven. Mm-hmm. I mean, human mind is capable of a lot more than what. It's not just contained within your body. You can make things happen if you work hard enough at it, and if that's your mindset, and you can will things to happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, and if you add belief into the mix, then that rises that possibility about 100-fold. You know,
right?
Because belief is a very powerful thing.
It's just as much as you can will your life to be what you need it to be. If you will you're in a good position in life, then you will find a way to do it.
No.
It may not happen overnight, but I mean that's just a simple one. But I mean, mindset is extremely powerful, and perception, like you said. Now, I'll give it to the viewers in a way. I've said this once before on the radio, but I'll give an example of how powerful the mind really is. I work in shipping. But at the same time, my father worked in home heating. So I used to go out and work with him. I'd moonlight and work home heating with him. Mm-hmm. And we had a call come in for a house that was supposedly the heat had been out all day. They were freezing. And so we walk into a house. It's like 200 degrees in the room. I'm not even exaggerating. The thermostat on the wall read that it was 52 degrees in the room. It was buried at whatever the lowest point it would go to. The thermometer, the thermostat was broken. And so the thermostat read that it was like 0 degrees in the room, so they were all bundled up on a couch in blankets.
Wow.
In blankets, like blankets on top of blankets. They're all freezing in a room. We walk in, we're ready to strip down to our T-shirts, and put some shorts on to go work on to go put our thermostat on the wall, put the thermostat on the wall, shut the heat down, and they're happy. The power of the mind is really there. I mean, if you perceive something to be true, you can make it true. I mean, there was a whole family freezing to death on the couch in 100 degrees.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think it was probably like 97 or 98. They had a furnace that was just running constant, and it would not shut off. And they literally thought they were freezing.
Wow.
And there was no doubt in my mind. They thought they were freezing to death because they were all huddled up on a couch in blankets. I mean, they must have been. I can't. We were sweating when we walked through the door. I mean, we were sweating.
Wow.
Literally, we walked in from like ice cold to just. It was just like the ungodly. I mean, I've been through. I work in engine rooms. It was ungodly.
Wow.
It was just. And they were all they're all covered in blankets. I was like, are you kidding? Change the thermostat. We just changed the thermostat, put it in there, and they were happy, and they were all fine. They were so happy we came out, and I'm not saying that to pick on if that person or anyone who knows who that is that was listening, but it's just the point of it's the power of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's really that powerful. It's really that suggestive. You can do it to yourself. You can haunt yourself.
Yeah. Actually, now that you mention that, and back to Lloyd Auerbach, we saw him do a lecture. And it was a really fascinating thing, and he tried something with the audience. He asked people to close their eyes and visualize themselves. How do you see yourself when you close your eyes and visualize yourself and look at yourself? And he polled the audience, asked them after they had visualized themselves, how many people, when they visualized themselves, did it basically from the knees up. And about 98% of the room raised their hand. I was kind of surprised. I visualized everything, but most of the people, visualized basically from the thigh or knee up. And which is very similar to how many apparitions are seen. So he's actually worked some cases truly where people were haunted by themselves, and it was kind of a neat thing. And again, suggestibility is big. I'm a big fan now of the quantum physics stuff, and it's a little bit on the advanced side, but it's kind of neat when you reduce the world to 1 billion times what you're used to. And everything works different. It's just so as an engineer,
it's very simplistic but complex at the same time. Yeah,
and especially the study that you look at a particle and is it a wave or is it a particle? And now they're saying if the people are observing this, then therein lies the change. So it's the observer. It's not the particle itself; it's the power of the observer, and kind of amazing. And with the hypnosis, we do these things called past life regression hypnosis, and I used to think it was the biggest crap because. Again, if it's hypnosis, then it's got to be suggestible, and who can see their past lives, and that's a bunch of hoo-ha. But as I studied the process and the practice of it, and got to know it, really intimately, and studying it, it really is extremely therapeutic, because 9 times out of 10. And this is past life or no past life, whether it you believe in it or not, or think it to be possible or not, is irrelevant. It seems to fill voids in people's life. The biggest unanswered questions to why do I do things this way, or why do I act like this when I don't want to, leads to this past life. And whatever they come up with when they go through it, it kind of, without even trying or thinking about it consciously, fills in all these gaps, answers a lot of questions. I had one myself. My father has been very gracious and giving to me throughout my life, and I really never understood why I was so blessed. And in this regression, I discovered in a past life, my father in that past life murdered me. I was on the verge of being discovered in the entertainment industry. Father was a manager and carried me through, all the rough stuff and getting your feet wet and being green, and all this stuff. And once I finally was on the verge of a contract, a big money contract, I discovered in this past life that he had stolen from me. He was bleeding me dry of my savings. So this contract, we wouldn't be able to afford going places until the big check came. And he was so mortified of me discovering this that he shot and killed me. And in the same place where I have all my pain now, and it filled all these blanks. And, okay, maybe it sounds a little extreme or ridiculous, 30 years ago I would have said that, but in the ones that I've done and the way that I've seen people see their past lives and then realize within hours later that it kind of answers all these unanswerable questions for them, it is very therapeutic. So past life or no past life, it's good therapy, and it does wonders for people's inner peace. And it's hard to realize how much of the time we're living on our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is driving for us, doing all these activities, tying a shoelace, without thinking about it. There are so many, eating, using silverware. There are so many activities that we do during the course of any given day. Opening doors, walking. Things that you had to learn to do initially when very young, or sometimes not so much. Some people that have some head trauma have to relearn some of these things, and it's much harder when you're older to do it all over again. But they're estimating about 90 to 95% of our daily normal activity and living is subconscious. And very rarely do we consciously decide anything. What do you want for dinner? Where are we going to go on our date tonight? These most of the time we're just walking through stuff, and the internet and the computer and the cell phones and all this makes it even more so. So we're almost in a zombie setting now, and maybe that's why people are buying into this zombie stuff. I'm not a zombie guy, but I get it. And with the pain, because we're talking about living with chronic pain, you can take for the hypnosis for pain, there are 4 main quadrants. You split your body into quarters. Top left, top right, lower left, lower right. And under hypnosis, you can make yourself not feel one quarter at a time. Even with soreness, under hypnosis, you can block out all feeling in your top left, from your belly button to the top of your head, all things left, arm, shoulder, torso, all that. And you can find ways to block it out, and then you do it again top right.
Yeah, to that, you can do it subconsciously yourself.
Yeah, but you have to get the programming first. And the toughest thing, because no, go ahead.
I went to a healing session. The only reason I think about it, I just bust in on you. I'm sorry, but I actually went to one of those to a Reiki session, and they worked on. I had a lot. They restored a lot of the. It actually worked pretty good for restoring feeling. I actually lost feeling in my arms. But at the same time, when they went through all that stuff, I regained all the pains that I had in my legs. And then I went to a few sessions with it, and I would continually, it was always the same thing. I would be told, oh, well, you're all blocked on this side of your body. Well, that's where all the side of the body where my pain was. So anytime I was unblocked, I'd feel the pain, and then naturally I would just shut it back down. And it's just, you can't, it's something that's I can understand how hypnosis can exactly work that way. By being able to shut down a quarter of your body, you can subconsciously do it yourself. I did it without realizing it, but I was actually able to shut down in my entire legs, so I didn't feel my pain anymore, because by feeling the pain, I could no longer continue to do what I do. So if I don't feel the pain, then there's no pain, so I can continue to work and make my way. So I can completely validate exactly what you're saying about the fact of being able to actually shut down and not feel it just by adjusting your subconscious to understand that you no longer wish to feel that pain.
Yeah. And, the subconscious is like this supercomputer. It keeps track of all 5 senses, everything that you've seen, heard, smelled, tasted, touched your whole life. But it's guarded. It doesn't know how to react in emotional ways because it's a logical supercomputer. And blocking this is areas of bias, judgment, belief, and other internal behaviors, things that are drilled into you from your parents, your friends, yourself, books, teachers, all these things that just throughout life.
I'll go even further. Probably even past lives.
Probably even past lives, and in order to get through those guards, you really have to bring the body and mind to a very peaceful and tranquil state, and that's really what hypnosis is. I mean, it is said that when you drive long distances, you're basically under hypnosis. When you're watching television, you're basically under hypnosis. There's a lot of situations in everyday life where you think that your brain is working overtime, especially to drive 70 miles an hour for 4 hours or whatever. And you think,
that's
boy, I have to be
that
super alert for that, but no.
Ability. My mind wanders off. I don't care if it's TV, whatever it is. My mind wanders off in a million directions at all points in time.
Oh, sure. Well, you're analytical, brother. You're a thinker,
I've tried hypnosis. It won't work on me.
Oh, not so. Look, and I'll use a radical example of that because there are people. Oftentimes, you'd be surprised. There is this test that we administer to find out your level of overall suggestibility, and most of that is also unconscious. So the way you answer these questions, you won't really know until you know. But for super radical hyperthinkers, there are still ways to do it. Giving you a mathematical problem, for example. Recite the alphabet in your head, every 4th letter. And when you get to the end, start over again. So you're working on something that keeps you busy, and while you're doing that, and you're so fixated on that problem, then I'll be talking. And your conscious mind won't hear it, but your unconscious will. And that's the part we're trying to reach anyway. So, yeah, there are ways to do it. The big thing, though, is I can turn people into mass murderers, and that.
They did. I went twice. One was just a regular session. They tried, just doing the voice talk down, and that didn't work. And then we had one where they had some kind of a screen with different symbols on it, and I was doing kind of like what you're saying with the math problem. It was a logic problem. Mm-hmm. They did that, and I just don't have the ability to tune out. I'm able to sit there and listen to exactly what you're saying and do the math problem or logic problem at the same time. It just doesn't. Because
you're used to working in the engine room and listening to 6 different things.
Yeah, noise doesn't bother me. I tend to tune. I can tune most noise out. So background noise, my natural instinct is to tune it out. So if it's something that I don't want to hear or annoying, I can't hear it. My wife hates me for that because the kids could be yelling in the next room and I don't hear a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
She'll be like, the kids are yelling. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not because you're analytical, because you're a guy, That's a guy thing, I think.
Maybe it is.
Yeah, it is. I'm very hypnotizable, but I can tune my environment out. It's also a pain thing, and Cheryl will probably agree with me on this. We can detach ourselves from things. It starts kind of as a survival thing. You have to find ways to not feel this, 800%. 100% of the time. So you find distractions, TV shows you like, or books, or radio shows, or internet, or something, and eventually you
we're doing radio.
Learn to tune things out, and detach yourselves. I get around people, and I especially people I really love to see. And, boy, I'm happy to see them, and I'm happy to be with them. And I have a very short time to make that known. So I'll be very indicative of that. But when I'm not around people, I'm hiding. So I think that, and that's why, and people like really close friends don't understand, that I can detach so easily from even things that I love, because we just have to detach from things, period, and it is what it is. But tuning things out, I think, I know a lot of guys that can do that, and I know guys that aren't major thinkers that can do that quite easily too. So I think it's a guy thing, and I think most women would agree with that it's a guy thing,
Yeah, I don't know. We're invisible, right? That's the way it's supposed to be.
I've adjusted myself, especially with 3 kids. They can be screaming at the top of their lungs, but until someone's hurt, I don't really, Ben sometimes will be like, Cheryl, do you hear the kids? Cheryl, do you hear the kids? Cheryl, do you hear the kids? And it's like, well, nobody's hurt yet. Why am I, I hear what I need to hear, but it's...
Well, that's just the rule of parenting. You learn the difference between crying. It's like they're whining.
It's not.
They're crying.
When you have
that's an injury cry. No. All right, I'm going to run.
And it's not just that. It's we're like being in pain. You're so used to just turning off stuff in your head that you really don't. You notice what you want to notice and try to just ignore what you don't need to feel or hear. People may say that some sort of detached psychosis or whatever. It's not. It's coping. It's
Yeah. Mhm. We all find different ways to do it. The challenge was when they're infants. And we had this book, My Baby and You, Dr. Penelope Leach, if memory serves me correctly, and it was a godsend. And they would list the different kind of crying that your infant does, and it changed by breaths between wah, 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 and if there's like 3 every second, then it's they're hungry, and if it's 1 every second, then they're uncomfortable, or and it was just the neatest thing. And as they grow up and you kind of get to know their patterns and stuff, then you can figure out when it's manipulative and when it's survival oriented, and there's always a big difference. And my biggest thing for me was there was this kid in our neighborhood that stole a Pokemon card from my daughter. This was when Pokemon first came out, and they had these trading cards, and it was capitalism at its finest, and these kids that were 4 and 5 years old were trading cards, and based on some cards were more valuable than others because they were rare, and others were more common, or they had different kinds of symbols with them that either made them rare or not, or more valuable than whatever. And this kid come in, stole some, came into our house, stole some cards, valuable ones, out of my daughter's room, and we caught him, found him, caught him, looked me straight in the eye. This kid was 7 years old, looked me straight in the eye and lied to my face. And I was absolutely astounded. I didn't think a 7-year-old had the capability to lie that well, because he was convincing, So I did all these studies about lying. I read up. I got all these different books. They had a show about it on the Fox channel about 3 years ago called Lie to Me. It was about this guy who was an expert in telling when people are deceitful or not. And it was based on a real guy, whose books I had, just so I could figure out how a 7-year-old could do that, And there's a lot of things, and that ties in with the hypnosis stuff too. People, you ask, here's an analytic thing for you, Ben. You ask somebody how old they were or what year it was when they were 4 years old, and you watch, and they will look up to access that thought, but they're figuring it out. So it's factual thought. Let's say they look up to their left. Well, then you can pretty much surmise that if you ask them how they like your sister, if they look up in the opposite direction, then they're making it up. It's creative. Or if they look up in that same direction, then it's based on factual things, and you can kind of get a lot out of that.
Yeah, my kids all have certain tells when it comes to stretching the truth, and even Ben does too. Not a single one of them can get by me when it comes to that. And I have to go back for a minute, Chip, and I have to say I thought that I would go a few hours without hearing the word Pokemon.
Oops. Sorry.
You. My son is going to be 8 in November, and him and it's their new obsession. They all watch it on Netflix, and he just got his first set of cards with some money that he earned doing tours out in the yard. And
no, he didn't just earn tours. I'm gonna give it credit for this one. He moved an entire pile of almost half a cord of wood.
Well, Ben can't do it, so he's like, "Hey, Charlie, you do some yard work."
I was running the controls on the splitter, so I just sat there. My dad was loading the wood, and he was stacking it up in the tractor. My daughter was driving it over, and he pulled it out of the tractor, stacked it up. About a half a cord of wood he did.
But anyways, that's all we hear. That's all we've heard. 2 weeks is Pokemon card this, Pokemon card that.
Well, you know what though? As parents, we felt helpless because these kids are trading. You don't know if your kid's getting ripped off or not, and it's hard to police that sort of thing. And at the time, I was doing sales at a hotel. This hotel said, find new ways to generate revenue. So I got these guys in cubicles at the big mall in our city, the big mall. They had these little cubicle things or whatever they call them, the little store setups, but without walls, like the Sunglass Hut and things like that. They had a guy from Japan that carried the Pokemon, got him straight from Japan, and they had another guy that got him from U.S. And between the two of them, they were in cahoots with the best retailers of each. So I had a guy who knew all the Japanese cards, and I had a guy who knew all the American-based Pokemon cards. And I brought them into the seminars so they could teach both kids and parents how not to get ripped off trading these Pokemon cards. And at the end, these guys could show off their stuff, and they could sell, and they could trade, with all the kids and families and stuff, and everybody made out. It was $10 to get in. It was pure profit. It was a beautiful thing. And, that's life. So
thank goodness for him. I'm very mathematical, and unfortunately, I had my geeky role in school. We didn't have, I don't know if you remember the Magic Age.
Oh, sure. The Magic and Gathering, the Magic Gathering, yep.
Well, I went through that phase, and thankfully I grew out of it. But I went through a phase, so my kids are safe with trading cards because I know values.
He comes home and he's like, I want to trade, I want to bring my cards, and it's like, no, I don't know what it is.
You can't take this one. This one is a good one.
I know we have about a minute and 45 seconds, so I want to go back and make sure we touch on your book, Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. Can you let us know where everybody can get that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have about a minute. Yeah, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and from the publisher, which is Rowe. That's ROWE. Rowe Publishing website is rowepub/eventhedead. There's a Facebook page, facebook.com/eventhedead, for the book Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. It is also now available in ebook or Kindle form at half the price. So it is available on paperback and on ebook. You can get both of those, both at Rowe Publishing and Amazon.com, and the paperback at Barnes & Noble. And it is in bookstores nationwide. Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth by Chip Reichenthal. And you can find me generally on Facebook. And my radio show, Beyond the Norm, is on the A1B Radio Network, Monday nights from 9 to 10 Eastern. Beyond the Norm each and every Monday night. I am on Facebook. Try Victims of Retail. That's my old band name. It's easier to spell than Reichenthal, but that is REICHENTHAL.
Thank you so much. And you can find him at Paranormal events throughout the area. I know he's been really busy. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
We'll put his links up on our page so you can find everything.
We wish you very well, and it was such a nice conversation having with you tonight.
Oh, I love you guys, and, what a wonderful reunion. So long in the making, and it was an absolute honor.
Thank you. It is for us, too.
We'll talk to you again soon.
We'll look forward to it.
Still there?
Thanks.
Yep, we're still on for a second. They got a few minutes before they'll cut us off. No, we're no longer online, but we're online. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The non-air. As Cheryl was saying, we should start recording the non-air because we have such great conversations after air. It's pathetic. She's like, everything comes as soon as the radio shuts off.
Well, like we touched on before, there's so much that you just can't say on air just because you have to worry about offending people and honesty levels, etc.
Well, then we try to set it as a friendly. We try to set it up as friendly format. We'd like to bring people in like family, and like we let you come in. We just sat there and we just let it go, and we had fun at the beginning right there. We didn't get really into the nitty gritty. Let people get a family feel, and make you it makes everybody feel like they're just part of the family. We're just having a discussion and bring it in. Yeah. So it's a good time. It was a great show. Well, thank you for having us on. Having for you coming on.
Oh, it was my honor. I'll have to return the favor sometime. Have you guys on?
That would be awesome. We'd love it. That would be great. And you got me on Facebook. I'd like to talk. I messaged you a couple times, but I'd like to talk to you more about that past life because that's something that's been haunting me. So sometime we'll hook up and talk about that because you have a little bit of experience in there, and who knows, the next paranormal event, we might be there.
Yeah, maybe we could try it on you sometime.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm willing to try. It's hard for me, but I'm willing to try. I guess that's the point.
Trust me, it'll be harder for me than you. Because I'm the guy who's going to try to put you under, So, but look, there are ways to do it, And
I don't doubt that. And there are some mundane tasks, but it's kind of hard to hypnotize me while I'm mowing the lawn.
Oh yeah. Well, you never know. That probably wouldn't be a good idea. Probably not. I was thinking, I could do that, but no, I'm not going to try.
One of us is losing a toe if we do that. I don't know who. So.
Well, either one of us, it still wouldn't be really bad. So we don't want to see that.
But we'll keep in touch. I'll send you over my number and everything so you can get a hold of us that way. I don't think you have that yet.
No, I don't. And please do. That would be phenomenal. And also Skype. I don't know if you guys ever go on Skype. That's easier.
It does. I tend not to, but I just don't ever have internet signal when I'm gone, so I never go on it. I don't have any friends on it, so I never did it.
Yeah, I hear you.
She plays with it because my niece and everything's on it, and I just use hers. She just
well, there you go. Yeah,
so
that's good. Yeah, we
do.
Do it on hers. Because that's what I use it for the radio.
All right, poor Tiff wants to get to bed.
All right.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I will be in touch, and thank you guys so much for such a wonderful honor.
I'll give you that number, and feel free to contact me anytime.
Oh, please do, man. And I give you mine, but I never have my phone on. You're really, it's so easy to get a hold of me on Facebook. I am because at least I'll see it.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
you have a good
fun with the kids.
Great show, you guys.
Thank you. You too. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Have a good night.
Yep. Any Pokemon questions, you just let me know. I'll see if I can help.
I'll send it your way. You guys can Skype.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
All right. Bye, Chip.
Yep. Take care. Thanks.